Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf here at DailyClout. Again, it's Naomi Wolf here at DailyClout. And as promised, today I'm reading Senate Bill 2796, S2796 in the New York State Assembly, because that is in the news. It was enacted on January 22nd, and it's a source of a lot of controversy because President Trump mentioned it in the State of the Union last night as allowing live birth or allowing abortion until birth. Supporters of abortion rights, in contrast, are saying that pro-life opponents of the bill are mischaracterizing it. They say that it doesn't allow abortion till live birth without restraint, and that all it does is restore or enshrine into law at a state level the rights that women have to terminate abortions that are enshrined in Roe v. Wade. So what we're going to do here at DailyClout, which is our mission, is to actually read the bill. It's a short bill, and explain it to you so you can follow along and you can see for yourself who's telling the truth, so you're not subjected to, spin from either side. So in this case, both sides are sort of right, and neither side is telling the whole truth. And it's a very, very simple bill to understand, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. And what you're going to find is that the title of the bill is an act to amend the public health law in relation to enacting the Reproductive Health Act and revising existing provisions of law regarding abortion. So that's number one. It's also to amend the penal law, which means criminal law, the criminal procedure law, the county law, and the judiciary law in relation to abortion. So what that's saying in the preamble is this bill decriminalizes people who perform abortions. It takes abortion in New York State from penalties of criminal prosecution if you help a woman have an abortion after the first trimester, and it moves it squarely into health. So it basically decriminalizes, right, people who help a woman have an abortion, and it makes the penalties be framed in healthcare law rather than criminal law. So it basically takes it out of the you're going to jail if you violate this law section of the House of Law in New York State. All right. To repeal certain provisions of the public health law relating to abortion, to repeal certain provisions of the education law relating to the sale of contraceptives, and to repeal certain provisions of the penal law relating to abortions. Okay, so that's the preamble, and a preamble kind of explains the why of a bill. So now let's get to the summary of provisions. So Section 2, and this is what's important of the bill, creates a new article, 25A of the public health law, which states that an abortion may be performed, and these are the key words, right, by a licensed, certified, or authorized practitioner within 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, or if there is an absence of fetal viability, or at any time when necessary to protect a patient's life or health. So these are the critical words that everyone is fighting over. And you can see those words in the paragraph right under. Unfortunately, in the Senate text, it's not paginated. Thankfully, DailyClout and BillCam paginate our texts, but I'm reading from Senate.gov, and it's right below the preamble. So what those lines just did is it basically said this law means that you can have an abortion within 24 weeks, which is the first it's the first 6 months actually, right? You can have an abortion if at any time in your pregnancy, if your pregnancy is not viable, or you can have an abortion at any time if a medical practitioner says that your health or life are at stake. So really, when you look at that paragraph, it is actually, I have to say, I'm pro-choice, but I have to say what the pro-life critics of this bill are saying is actually true. It does actually give women the right to terminate a pregnancy at any time after 24 weeks, right? After 6 months. But you need to be able to get a medical professional to say it endangers your health or your life to carry on the pregnancy. So what critics of this bill who are pro-life have been saying is, well, women can't, like, what is, protect the life, protect the health. Women can say it will depress me to have a viable, healthy baby, the day before I'm due to give birth, so please terminate my pregnancy. Technically, they're right. If you can get a healthcare professional to sign on to a statement that it's going to affect your mental health, it doesn't define what kind of health, you can, with this bill in New York State, terminate a pregnancy right up till birth, as I read this bill, and I've read it carefully. Also, what is fetal viability? It doesn't really define it that well. So does it mean that the fetus is never going to live if you carry the pregnancy to term? Does it mean viable, like healthy? There's no impairment. There's no disability. Disability rights activists have been very critical of bills that allow rights to terminate based on disability that's identified in a fetus. And a lot of disabilities in fetuses aren't really identified till fairly late in the pregnancy. So there's substance to that critique. I'm being neutral. I'm not concluding either side, but I'm just saying viability is not defined. So let me read again the critical sections. So here, Article 25A, a healthcare practitioner, licensed, certified, or authorized under Title 8 of the Education Law, acting within his or her lawful scope of practice, may perform an abortion when, according to the practitioner's reasonable and good faith professional judgment, based on the facts of the patient's case, the patient is either within 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, right? Or there is an absence of fetal viability, not defined, what is fetal viability, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. So that's pretty stark. That's pretty clear. It does indeed simply affirm the rights of Roe, enshrined in Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade enshrines these rights. And the reason that you've got a lot of states trying to enact bills like this is in apprehension. Democrats are apprehensive about what will happen to the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade, now that President Trump's picks are on their way to taking their seats on the court and deciding any challenges to Roe v. Wade. So they're trying, a lot of states with influential Democrats are trying to sort of enshrine Roe v. Wade's rights state by state. But a lot of people argue that Roe v. Wade, was, it's kind of a messy decision because it actually does enshrine these rights under the guise of privacy. So it doesn't mean it's not the right decision or the wrong decision, depending on where you are in the abortion debate. But it does mean it's Roe v. Wade does give women the right to terminate after the first trimester. So a lot of people in America support abortion rights or abortion on demand for the first trimester and are less sure that it should be available on demand in the second and third trimester. I have to say, having looked at abortion law all over Europe and Australia and New Zealand, as well as the United States, we are unusual in having a law like Roe v. Wade, or a decision like Roe v. Wade, which allows second and third trimester abortions pretty much on demand in a lot of cases, even though they're only 1.3% of all abortions, according to the Center for Disease Control. And what I have seen is in other countries that allow abortion on demand, total privacy for the whole first trimester, there really isn't an anti-abortion movement. And that's true of Britain, or a very marginal anti-abortion movement. It's true of Western Europe. It's true of Scandinavia specifically. It's true of Australia. It's true of New Zealand. So it does say that we have kind of an unresolved social issue in the United States, that we are unusual in allowing second and third trimester abortions in certain cases, and that understandably gives a lot of energy and emotional persuasiveness to the pro-life or anti-choice movement generally. All right. So this section of this bill, right under Article 25A in the Reproductive Health Act, let me restate. First of all, it says you don't have to be a doctor. You can be a licensed medical practitioner. And so this is really interesting because, of course, doctors' offices have been targeted by the pro-life movement. So this allows abortions to be performed by nurses or by clinicians or by a bunch of people who are not doctors, right? So it decentralizes the abortion procedure. And it allows a lot of people who right now can't legally do abortions to do them. So the pro-choice movement would say that's a really good thing, because poor women, rural women, women who are under 18 have been targeted by laws since the 70s at a state level to make it harder and harder for them to get to that doctor's office or to get to those big cities where that Planned Parenthood is. And of course, Planned Parenthood has been targeted. But what this does is, the pro-choice movement is being kind of clever and strategic and saying, well, we'll make sure that we can empower a bunch of people who are not doctors, who are nurses or who are clinicians, to provide these services wherever women might need them. And if you're pro-choice, you'd say that's a really good thing, because a lot of women have died or been injured or brought children to term that they couldn't look after, and kind of against their will, they would say, because they couldn't afford to get to a doctor's office with such restrictions on care provision for abortions, for the abortion procedure. So this decentralizes that. But it also says it's within 24 weeks, right? Or there is absence of fetal viability, we talked about that, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. So this clearly indicates at any time in your pregnancy, if you can make the case that your health would suffer, even if you'd get depressed, even if you have, a bad back, even if you have, psychological challenges in bringing a child to term, or bringing a fetus or an embryo, turning into a fetus, turning into a baby to term, you get to terminate. So I have to say, the critics of this bill aren't lying. It does actually allow for that. So now what's really interesting is that it decriminalizes people who help women have abortions under circumstances that used to be criminal in New York State. Sorry for that sound. So homicide means conduct which causes the death of a person or an unborn child with which a female has been pregnant for more than 24 weeks, under circumstances constituting murder, manslaughter in the first degree, manslaughter in the second degree, or criminally negligent homicide. So what this section of the bill does is that it people used to be targeted for being accused of homicide or manslaughter if they helped a woman after 24 weeks have an abortion. This section decriminalizes that act, right? The following definitions are applicable to this article. Person, when referring to the victim of a homicide, means a human being who has been born and is alive. So that's a phrase that's going to drive pro-life people crazy, because it's saying you're not killing anyone if you terminate a fetus between 24 weeks and 9 months. If you help someone kill that being or end that pregnancy, no one is being murdered, or there's no homicide, there's no manslaughter. It's not a criminal ending of another human being's life. Paragraph B of subdivision 8 of section 700 of the criminal procedure law must read, any of the following felonies: assault in the second degree, as defined in section 125 of penal law, assault in the first degree, reckless endangerment, etc., strangulation, manslaughter, murder in the second degree, and it goes on and on. Criminal act. It's a whole paragraph of things you're not doing anymore if you help a woman terminate pregnancy after 24 weeks. So it lists a bunch of ways you could have been criminalized, literally gone to prison, and some doctors, of course, have gone to prison for helping women have late-term abortions. This decriminalizes that act. All right, so there's a ton of language about not criminalizing the act. It's not negligence. It's not criminal negligence. It's not manslaughter. So really, that's the act. It's pretty brief. It moves the whole thing into public health law as opposed to criminal law. It, again, allows people who are not doctors to perform abortions in the state of New York. And it clearly does allow women to have abortions if the fetus isn't viable, whatever that means, after 24 weeks, or if they can persuade a medical practitioner using reasonable judgment that their health of whatever kind would be impaired or their life would be endangered by the carrying forth of the pregnancy. So I'm going to just read the justification of the bill. The justification is, in 1970, New York legalized abortion in some circumstances, thereby recognizing that a woman has a fundamental right to make medical decisions about the course of her pregnancy. 3 years later, the Supreme Court issued its landmark decision, Roe v. Wade, holding that this fundamental right is protected by the United States Constitution. During the decades since Roe v. Wade was decided, there have been numerous court decisions clarifying the scope of the right to abortion, but unfortunately, New York's laws have remained outdated. Furthermore, it is clear that some provisions of New York law are unconstitutional and have proved burdensome to women seeking to assert their constitutionally protected right to an abortion. So this bill updates New York's abortion statutes to address constitutional flaws in our laws and recognize a woman's fundamental right to access safe legal abortion. This is a new bill, and it says, effective date, this act shall take effect immediately. And the bill is S2796. And it was introduced by Senators Kroiger, Stewart-Cousins, Breslin, and a host of others. So that's the rationale. And it's true. A lot of states, including Massachusetts, are arguing that they need bills like this because the laws at a state level have not caught up with Roe v. Wade's protections that do let women terminate pregnancies after the first trimester in certain circumstances. So supporters of, and I keep kind of restating this because I don't want you to be subjected to spin from either side. So supporters of Roe v. Wade say this is just, if you agree with Roe v. Wade, which is now the law of the land, this just updates Massachusetts and New York law to be congruent with Roe v. Wade. However, a lot of people say Roe v. Wade was poorly decided, and it is, I'm pro-choice, but it is interesting and notable that Roe v. Wade is seen as protecting women's constitutional rights, right? That's a huge basis to undergird a claim to right to abortion. I support women's right to abortion in the first trimester, just disclosing my own personal point of view. But there are a lot of countries that make abortion safe and legal as part of the healthcare system and don't adjudicate about it on the basis of constitutional rights. So that's the reality of Roe v. Wade, that in order to talk about abortion in the United States or abortion rights, you're inevitably talking about constitutional rights. So to wrap up and to be clear, the bishops and the Catholic Church and even President Trump to some extent are not wrong. The critics of this bill are not wrong. And I think that abortion rights activists do well to kind of be truthful with people, because otherwise it's just a big muddle and people don't know who to believe and they go to extremes and poor policy ensues. This bill does indeed allow many people who are not physicians to carry out abortions. You could think that's good, you could think that's bad. It totally decriminalizes helping a woman have an abortion after 24 weeks in the state of New York. And it does indeed give women the right to terminate an abortion if they can persuade a healthcare provider that their health or life would be damaged by it. Not a doctor, a healthcare provider, right? Which it is a common thing. I mean, that's how women used to get abortions before Roe v. Wade, was to persuade a sympathetic doctor that their health or life would suffer if they didn't terminate. But it does give the women of New York State the right to terminate a pregnancy, to choose abortion in the second and third trimester if they can say, this will negatively affect my health, or this is going to threaten my life. That's good, you might think that's bad, but you really need to know what this bill does. If you like it, we'll embed the bill cam. You can tweet the bill sponsors and say, good job, it's now the law of the land, it's been passed January 22nd. If you want a bill like that in your state, go ahead and tweet the bill to your own representative and say, we want a bill like this. If you don't like it, let the sponsors know. Let the New York State Assembly know. Let Massachusetts know. Use the bill cam. Have your say. If you like parts of it and not other parts, which a lot of people based on data about support for abortion rights in America are likely to feel, take a look at the bill, read it for yourself. It's pretty short. It's only about 10 pages long. And, identify the pages that you like and the pages you don't like, the paragraphs you like and the ones you don't like, to your representative. We are done with letting them tell us what's in the bill. We're going to know what's in the bill for ourselves. This is DailyClout. This is Naomi Wolf. And again, this is the New York State Reproductive Health Bill introduced by Senator Kroger, State Senator Kroger, passed. It's the law of the land, and it does give women the power to terminate abortions in certain cases up to pretty much anytime they want before birth. That's the truth. This is DailyClout. Don't take my word for it. Decide for yourself by reading the bill. If you do like this service of us reading the bills and explaining them, please become a member of DailyClout. It's only $3.99 a month. Give it as a gift. The more members we have, the bigger we can grow and scale, so that every bill that affects you can be explained, video made, and the bill embedded for you to share in social media. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you so much for joining me to discuss the Reproductive Health Act in New York State. Thank you so much.